looking at your part 2 of exercise 2, we're going to start working with layers today in Photoshop. And as we've talked about a little bit so far, layers can be one of the more confusing things in Photoshop, and also the thing that you need to pay the most attention to in terms of keeping things straight. And so the more practice you get with this, the better. So in order to get started, we are going to open up the file that's labeled 2B Start. So once you open that file, you should see a close-up picture of a pineapple. So go ahead and save this image to your computer. And just as we've done before, you're going to rename the file to be working. So once you've saved that as to be working, if you look over in the bottom right corner, you should have a panel that I'm circling with my mouse that's called Layers. So does everyone see that on their screen? Does anyone not see it? Okay, so usually you're going to have that open as a standard panel, but if you don't, know that you can go up to the tab at the top labeled Window, and then you can go down to Layers and click on it so that you can view it. So just so you know, if you ever lose it, that's how you get it back. So if you look over at this file in the layers area, you'll notice that we have several layers open. You'll notice that you see, just like we talked about, background, pineapple, flower, Hawaii, and postage, okay? So go ahead and scroll down to where you see the background layer. So I've just clicked on it, so it's a light gray. And then I am going to make sure that it's selected and that just to the left of it, the eye is clicked and that it's visible. So the eye icon is what's going to indicate to you that the layer is visible in your image window. So notice if I click off of it, that the background goes away. And then if you scroll your mouse up real quick, if I click the eye on the pineapple goes away. So as long as the eye is clicked, that means that it's visible. So we're going to move on to renaming and copying a layer. So go ahead and open your 2B Beach file. So you should have an image that comes up that looks like this. You can see that when we look over at our layers panel, the beach is now called layer 1. So we want to rename this so that we keep what's in our layers straight. So that's one of the main things that you want to make a note about when it comes to layers, is that naming them the appropriate thing is really important to keep them straight. So if you double click on the type layer 1, just replace that by typing in beach and then press enter. And then your new type is saved. So keep this layer selected, and then we're going to go up to our horizontal toolbar or menu at the top. We're going to click the Window tab, and then we're going to go down to Arrange, which should be the first one. Then you are going to select one of the layouts that is labeled 2 up. So you can choose 2 up horizontal or 2 up vertical. So I'm going to choose 2 up vertical. And depending on which one you chose, you'll notice that now you have your 2 images you're working with side by side or stacked on top of each other. So select your beach image, which it should be selected still, but just verify that so that it's the active file. So we're going to go over to our vertical toolbar to the Move tool. So this one at the very top with the 4 arrows. And then we're going to use this tool to drag our beach onto the 2B working file. So let me do that again. I've got my Move tool. I'm going to drag it. And then I'm going to release my mouse. So now what you have is the beach layer is now in your 2B working document. And you have them combined together. So the beach layer should be between your background and your pineapple. If it's not, then we can move it. So I'm going to, and then an easy way to do this, so I'm going to step back and show you. If you go to your layers panel, scroll down to your pineapple. Select your pineapple. And then using the Move tool, I'm going to click it and drag it. And then I can drag it down in between the pineapple and the background. So as soon as I've done that, then my beach image is behind my pineapple. So does everyone have their beach behind their pineapple? Okay. Does anyone need an extra minute to work on that? Good to go? All right. So we are going to close our 2Beach image because we're done with it as a separate file. So go ahead and click out of that. And you don't have to save changes to it. And now you can see that it may have closed out your documents, or you may still have a 2-up display. So in order to get it back to looking at just our one image, we want to go up to Window, Arrange, and then we're going to scroll down to Consolidate All to Tabs. So that should bring you back to just your pineapple with your beach image. So now we want to look at our individual layers. So we're now on the section of the exercise called Viewing Individual Layers. So click the eye icon and make sure that it's clicked next to the pineapple. And then we want to deselect it. So unclick it so that the pineapple disappears. It's still in the file, but by clicking the eye, that means that we just can't see it for now while we work with our beach image, because the beach image is a separate layer. So we're going to go ahead and add a border to this layer, our beach layer. Okay. So what we want to do is make the opaque areas on this layer more obvious. And so we want to go up to Layer at the top horizontal menu. Scroll down to Layer Style. And then choose Stroke from that submenu. So you're going to see a menu that pops up on your screen. You're going to choose the size, which is in the pixels measurement as 5. You're going to choose the position as inside. You're going to choose a blend mode of normal, and that's a default setting, so it's probably already selected for you. The opacity should be 100%, and then your color should be white. So in my case, I have a green selected, and so I need to reselect white. So as soon as you have that done, you can click OK. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to order our layers. So we want to put them in a different order. So this is what's called in Photoshop a stacking order. And so that determines how the image you are viewing is going to lay on top of or fit in with the rest of the images. So you want to be very thoughtful about how you arrange your layers. So for the first step under rearranging layers, there's an order that you're going to put them in. So you're going to have postage first on the top, and then Hawaii, and then flower, and then pineapple, and then background. And we want to make all of these layers visible. So go ahead and go down the line and click the eye for each of them. So notice how when I have all of my images visible, I can see how they stack on top of each other. So then you can notice when you click off of certain ones, certain things are visible. And then when I add them back in, everything becomes visible again. So we want to drag the beach layer. So make sure that the beach layer is selected with the light gray color. And we want to drag it up so that it is between the pineapple and the flower layers. So I'm going to hold down my mouse, and then drag it up. And you'll know that it's positioned because you'll see a light gray line in between the layers. So if I pull it back down, notice how when I pull it up, I see that light gray line. That indicates to me that that will be its new placement. So as soon as I do that, the beach layer is now on top of the pineapple, but it's still behind the flower, the Hawaii, and the postage because it's beneath those layers in the stacking order. So now we're going to change the opacity of the layer. So in this case, for the image we're working with, the postmark looks a little bit too dark on the flower. And so we want to change that. So go over to your layers panel and select postage as your layer. So make that your active layer. And then you're going to click the arrow that is next to the opacity box. So if I go up from my layers listing, the opacity box is right here. So there's a little arrow right here, right to the right of the percentage listing. Click that, and there's a slider that appears. We have it at full viewing for opacity, so we want to scale that down to 25. So notice how when you click and start to move the slider down, the percentage goes down with it. So we want it to go to 25. So as soon as you've done that, you can click off in your screen to put that in effect. And notice now that it's become transparent a bit. So the black color still remains, but we can see it a little bit less. So it blends in. So now go back to your opacity and play around with it for just a minute. So slide it up to various values and notice how it gets darker and lighter. And if you go all the way down, it just disappears. And then bring it back to 25. So now that we've manipulated our images, we want to make sure that we're saving what we're doing. So go up and save while we're thinking about it. And now we're going to duplicate a layer and change the blending mode. So in order to do this effectively, we want to hide the Hawaii, flower, and beach layers. So to do that, how do we hide those layers? We click on our eye icons, okay? So we're going to go to Hawaii and click off of the eye. And then we're going to go to flower and do the same. And then beach and do the same. So now we're left with the postage and the pineapple. So scroll down to where you can see your pineapple layer. And then you're going to right-click on this layer. When you right-click on the layer, a box is going to come up with different options. We want to scroll up towards the top and select duplicate layer. And you don't have to do anything in this duplicate layer text window. You can just click OK. So now, if you look at your layers panel, you'll see that you have a new layer called Pineapple Copy. And it should appear above your pineapple layer. So in the layers panel, we are going to choose our blending modes. It's going to be in this area as a default where it says normal. So click on that drop down arrow and you're going to choose the overlay. So this blending mode, you can see that the pineapple got brighter and it's much more bold in the coloring. So if you choose the overlay blending mode, you're going to get something that's more vibrant and that has more shadows and brighter highlights. So go ahead and take a minute to play with some of the options in this menu and look at how it changes the pineapple. So if I go to soft light, then it changes it and makes it just a little less vibrant. If I go to hard light, still very similar to the overlay. If I go to difference, it's going to show you the contrast between black and white and just give you an outline. So these are all things, make yourself a note on your exercise that this is a menu that you may want to play around with when you do your homeworks and your assignments. So now make sure that you go back and select overlay because that's what we'll proceed with our pineapple. So next, we're going to make our postage layer visible. So mine is already selected, and I know this because of the eye. So make sure that your eye is clicked and visible as well. So in order to make our layer active, what do we do? We click on it. So in order to make sure that a layer is active, just simply click on it so that it's highlighted in light gray. Then we're going to do something different with this one, with the blending modes menu. So you're going to go back up to what we were just playing with, where it says normal, and you're going to click the drop-down arrow. And then you're going to choose multiply. So it's towards the top. So this actually multiplies the colors in your other layers with the color in the top layer. So it's picking up on what your other layers have in terms of coloring and shadowing. And you can see that when you did that, it's still opaque, but it's become a little bit stronger in its color. Not too much, but enough to be somewhat noticeable. So now that we've manipulated it further, let's go ahead and save again. So our next section is going to be resizing and rotating files. So we're going to make our beach layer active again. So how do we do that? We click on it. And then we also need to make it visible because it's not visible yet. So what do we do for that?
On the eye.
We click so that the eye is visible. Yes. So now my beach layer is both visible and active. So if you click on a layer and it doesn't show up, make sure that you have your eye clicked so that it's visible. Okay, so now with our beach layer active, we're going to go up to our Edit tab on the horizontal menu. And we're going to select Free Transform, about halfway down. So now you'll notice that there's this binding box with the little squares in increments around your image. And this box has handles on it, so these little anchor corners are called handles. And they're on each corner, and then they're on each side about halfway down as well. So the next thing we're doing is we're going to press Shift as we drag one of the corner handles inward to scale it down by 50%. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and then I'm going to drag this corner handle inward. And you just need to approximate. So as long as it's somewhere around half the size, that's fine. It doesn't need to be exact. So we want to go back up to our Edit tab at the top menu. And then we want to choose Free Transform. So just like we did before. So now we can see that if we linger outside of our boxes, that there's a double-edged curved arrow. So we want to rotate the image approximately 50 degrees. So in order to do that, I'm going to hold my mouse down outside of the image. So you don't have to be pulling from an anchor box. And then we're going to move the image to the right 15 degrees. So remember, if you move it right, it's a positive value. If you move it left, it's a negative value. Okay, everybody got that?
Yes.
Okay. So then you want to, just as we did before, you want to commit your choice. So either enter or the check mark. Okay, now we want to go back, back where we just were, and select your move tool, and then drag the beach photo so that the corner is under the flower. And then as soon as you've done that, save again. So the next thing we want to do is use a filter to create artwork. So we're going to go back over to our layers panel in the bottom right corner. And we're going to scroll all the way down to our layers and choose background. So select by clicking on it so that it's light gray. Then we want to click the new layer button, which is the one that looks like it has a corner turned up. So it's right next to the trash can. So go ahead and click that new layer button. And then you'll see that a new layer appears right above the background. And it has that checkered pattern on it because it's still blank and we haven't done anything with our artwork yet. So we're going to rename this layer, double click on layer 1 and rename it clouds. And then click or hit enter to save that. So next we're going to go over to our tools panel, so our vertical tool panel on the far left side of the screen. And we want to click the foreground color swatch. So our foreground is going to be the one that overlaps over the one that is set below that top square. So the one that's black. So click that swatch, and depending on your computer, you can single click or double click. And select a sky blue color from your color picker. So I'm gonna go maybe halfway in between the blues. That usually gets me a sky bluish color. And I want it to be sort of vibrant, but a little bit light. So I'm going to choose this one. You can choose any one you want. And then I'm going to hit OK in this menu to make it go away as soon as I've chosen my color. So now you'll notice on the right side of your screen that your color swatch panel has changed to that blue color. But we're still not done because we want to make this artwork and we want to make it look like clouds. So we need to go over to the filter tab at the top menu. And you're going to scroll down to render. And then from render, you're going to scroll down to clouds. So click clouds. And then it creates clouds for you. Okay, so does everybody have clouds now? Okay, good. So this is another area where you have lots of options to play with. And so this is another area where on your exercise sheet, you might want to make a note that there's good and a variety of options to play with when it comes to your homework and your assignments. So rendering can produce a lot of effects. Really all of these filters can. And it's just kind of a question of playing with them and deciding what fits your needs. So any of these things can go to work for you. You just have to decide what you want that to look like. Okay, so as soon as we have our clouds, we've done something significant again, so we need to save. Now we want to add a new layer. So as if we haven't complicated our layers enough, we want to add more. So this is the joy of Photoshop. So now we want to open our 2V flower file. So as soon as you have that open, you'll see this grouping of flowers. And next, we are going to use our magic wand tool. So we started to work with this on Monday. So how do we get to our magic wand tool? Who remembers? Yeah.
You go to the fourth one down and you click on the corner, and then your second one down is the wand.
Yeah, so we go to our, and so you guys can hear me okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, for some reason the sound doesn't carry as well, and so if someone towards the front of the room can just kind of help me repeat things, that would be super helpful. So I just want to make sure that I heard what she said correctly. Okay. So we're going to go to our quick select, and we're going to hold down. Then we choose our magic wand. So we know that it's active because the cursor turns into a wand. So we want to select all of the white background around this image. So there's a good shortcut for that that's different than the lasso tools that we used before. Make sure that you're going onto the white area of the image and click on the white area. And then it draws you some dotted lines. So then you can go up to select and choose inverse. So by doing that, what I'm telling the program is that I don't want to choose what I have selected in terms of the white area. I want to choose what I didn't select. And so then, as soon as you choose inverse, you'll see that the dotted lines have now shifted to the flower. So then we are going to choose Edit up at the top menu, and then Copy. So we've placed a copy of the flower on our clipboard now. So you can go ahead and close this image, and you don't have to save it. As soon as you save that and then, or don't save and then close, then it's going to bring you back to your 2B working file. So we want to paste in our new set of flowers. So we want to go up to Edit at the top horizontal menu. And we want to click Paste. The other way you can do this is to hit the keys Control-C. So as soon as I've done this, you'll see that my flowers now appear. And we want to make sure that the flower appears as a new layer that's above the pineapple copy. So if your layer is not above the pineapple copy, click your mouse on the layer hold down and then drag it to up above the pineapple copy layer. And now you'll see that those new flowers are behind the beach image, but on top of the pineapples. So we want to now position this new flower in the lower left corner on our postcard so that only half of the flower is visible. So we are going to our Move tool at the top vertical menu. And then we're going to drag it to about like so. And then go ahead and save as soon as you have it positioned the way you want it. So now we want to move to our next section, which is adding text. So to do that in the way that we want it, we want to go to our Hawaii layer. So scroll up until you see the Hawaii layer. And we want to make that layer visible. So as soon as I click the eye for this layer, you see Hawaii appear in block letters. We are going to go up to the top horizontal menu to the Select tab. If I click on the Select tab, then I'm going to go down to Deselect Layers. So by clicking this, it means that no layers are selected. So then in the Tools panel, we want to create our text. So we're going to go to our Vertical Tools panel on the far left side. And we are going to select the Horizontal Type tool. And that's the one with the big uppercase T. And as soon as you have that tool selected, if you move your cursor around, it's a dotted line square with something that looks like it has antennas. So after you have that tool selected, you're going to go up to the Window tab at the top, and you're going to select Character. So this gives you a panel to open. So we're going to do a variety of things with this panel. We are going to select a serif font. And so we want to choose Birch Standard. You may already have this font selected, and if you do, great. If you don't, then you're going to choose this drop-down arrow by the font selections at the top here, and then you can scroll down and choose from all of these fonts. If you ever need to find one, they're in alphabetical order. And one of the things that you have access to being subscribers to the Adobe Cloud that I just want to point out is that if you look in this upper right corner here, it says add fonts to Typekit. You can go on, and this is an application for Creative Cloud that you can download as part of what you've purchased. And you can then add other fonts that you want into your Photoshop and Illustrator and other programs. And so that might be something that you want to explore for your portfolio or your other assignments. So just wanted to point that out as an option. And if you look just to the right of where it says what the font title is, this is where you're going to choose something related to how the font appears. And so you can choose from things like regular, bold, but having chosen Birch Standard Regular, you may notice that this is not available. And that's because you have already selected a font with a regular classification. Yes.
They said the Max doesn't have the box. Yeah. Font. Sorry.
Oh wait, come closer and say that one more time.
The Mac computers don't have that Birch Standard font.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, choose your own. And it looks like a good portion of you are using Macs. So yeah, if there's ever a time that you don't see something available, just check in with one of us, and then you can select your own.
So I have to do, so I can pick the first.
Okay, does everybody have their font selected? All right. So next, we're going to choose our font size. So the font size is going to be right below the font selection menu with the little t and the big T next to each other. So we want 20-point font. One thing I will tell you for this exercise in particular is that your font size and the font are going to interact differently depending on how you couple those together, depending on what the font style is and the size. And so when it says 20-point font for this exercise, it may be too big to fit all of your text onto the postcard. That's what I've encountered on both of my computers. And so you might want to reduce the size of your font. I've been working when I've done these to create final images with like around 16 to 20 and that, or 16 to 18, and that's fine. And so that's probably something you'll want to do just so that you can see everything that you're doing. So I'm going to choose 16 just to just for the purposes of this. And then we want to go to our anti-aliasing menu. So this menu, if you look down in the bottom right corner, it has two little A's that are diagonal from each other. So we want to click the drop-down menu, and we want to select crisp. It may already be selected for you, but if it's not, just hit the drop-down menu and select it. And what we're doing by selecting crisp is sharpening the type. So we use this menu to keep the edges of the letters looking smooth and not jagged in any way. And so this makes it more professional. Then we want to select a large tracking value. So tracking value is the menu right here with the big T and the double arrow beneath it. And the tracking value is always going to be expressed in a percent value. And what we're doing with this value is it alters the spacing in between your letters. And so if you have a negative tracking value, your letters will be moved closer together. If you have a positive tracking value, you move them further apart. So that's something to keep in mind if you ever want to keep the letter size and the spacing proportional, then you'll want to pay attention to your tracking value. Then we want to make sure that our all caps button is selected. So that's this one here with the two T's in uppercase next to each other. And you know that it's selected because it is dark gray instead of light gray. You're going to do the same for the button at the very far left with just one uppercase big bold T. So this is our faux bold button. And it adds boldness to fonts that don't include any boldness. So that's something to kind of bring out some emphasis to your letters if your font isn't bold. Now we want to select a color. So if you click on color, right? So by clicking in our white box here, it brings up our color picker. And we want to select a green color. And so you can choose any green that you want. So I'm going to choose something, I'll just choose something over here. And as soon as I have selected my green, I'm going to click OK. So now that we have those things set in place, we want to go back and make sure that our typeface button tool is selected. So go over to the far left and make sure that you have selected your text tool. Okay, so then once you have that, you're going to go back down from your text layer. So you have a layer 2 and select Hawaii. So this isn't always intuitive, but the layer 2, this isn't what you're going to be doing necessarily you're typing on. Sometimes, in order to make sure that you have your text tool active, you have to click back on the layer you are working with and then click back to the layer 2. And then you'll see that you have your cursor back. So does everybody have their text cursor and then their layer 2 for the text selected? Okay. Are we sleepy today? Do we need to do stretches? I know I need to. We'll work in an exercise program to CAD class. Okay. So next, what we want to do is click just below the H in Hawaii with our text cursor. As soon as I do that, you'll see that a blinking cursor appears. This means that you can start typing. So you are going to type Island Paradise in capital letters. Using that blinking cursor. So if you clicked just below Hawaii, as I did, you'll see that it's somewhat close together and it's not centered in any way. But don't worry about that for now. We're going to work on that in our next step. So as soon as you have that text typed, go ahead and commit your change. So press enter or your check mark at the top. So then the layers panel now includes a layer named Island Paradise, and it has that uppercase T thumbnail to show that it is a text layer. So notice how once you get really involved in a Photoshop document, just how many layers you have, especially because each thing that you work with is going to be a separate layer. So that's why it's doubly important to keep them straight. So make sure that your Island Paradise is at the very top of your layer stack before you move on. Then we want to go and select our Move tool. So back up at the top of our vertical toolbar. And then we want to drag our Island Paradise text so that it is centered the way we want it below Hawaii. So I'm going to leave some space here, so I'll just leave it here. And then as soon as you've got it placed where you want it, go ahead and save your file. Okay, so now we're going to move on to applying a gradient to a layer. So this means that we are going to make the color go from dark to light in an area. So scroll down in your layers panel and choose your Hawaii layer. Make sure that it is both visible and active. So in order to work with just the Hawaii text for a gradient, we need to right-click the thumbnail in the layer. So either on the Hawaii text or in the image box there. Oh, scratch that. It needs to be in the image box. I forgot that. Okay. So inside the image box, so it has to be in the thumbnail. So what we're going to do is scroll up to where it says select pixels. As soon as you select that, you see the blinking dotted lines around all of the Hawaii text. In the Tools panel, the vertical toolbar on our left side, we're going to go over there with our cursor and select the gradient tool. So it's this rectangular box here that goes from dark to light. So select that tool. Okay, and I'll pause for just a minute here. Now you're going to have a pretty postcard to send someone. Oh, thanks, Shui. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is select our gradient color. So we want to go up to our foreground color swatch in the Tools panel. So that's the one that right now is selected blue. So you want to double click on that foreground color. And in your color picker, I want you to choose a shade of orange that you like. So I'll pick this one. soon as I have that selected, then I click OK. So in the options bar, so that's at the top here, you'll see a gradient box that goes from orange to white. You want to make sure that the linear gradient is selected. So click the drop-down arrow. And look at all of your different gradient options. So this gives you a sense of what you have to work with. So clicking out of that menu, you know that you're on the linear gradient because you will have this first box just to the right of that linear or that gradient picker selected. So does everyone see this box on their options menu? Make sure that that one is selected in dark gray. Then you want to, we are going to move on to our step 6 here. So in your options bar again, you want to, again, click the arrow on your gradient editor box. And your first box here, if you hover over each of the boxes, it'll tell you what they will do. So black to white, red to green, foreground to transparent. In our case, we want to use this first one. It's going to go from foreground to background. So make sure that that one is highlighted. So with your selection still active, with your blinking dotted lines on Hawaii, you are going to drag the gradient tool from the bottom to the top of your letters. So if you want to be sure to drag straight up, make sure that you press the Shift key as you drag. Okay, so I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and now I'm dragging up. Oops. So I'm going to press my Shift key, and as I'm doing this, notice how there's a gray line that forms to show me that I'm dragging straight up. So how far you go up is how far you will see the orange in your letters. So if I stop here, I'm only going to see orange up till about that point. So you can choose how far you want your orange to show. So then you are going to go up to Select, the tab at the top menu, and you're going to choose Deselect. This gets rid of your blinking dotted lines. And then save your file. Now we want to apply a layer style. And so when we do this, we're adding different effects. There's things like shadow and strokes and sheen. And so these things are going to affect the layer that you specify. And so we're going to go to our Island Paradise layer. So it should be at the top of your list. And then we're going to go up to our horizontal tool menu to the Layer tab. You're going to, in that tab, scroll down to Layer Style. And then you're going to choose Drop Shadow. And that's going to bring up this menu. So in this dialog box, make sure that you have right here on the far right, under your buttons, the preview option selected. So that make sure you have a check mark there. And in the structure area, so right here at the top, you see the word structure. We're going to make the following modifications. So if you click the drop-down arrow for blend mode, notice all of the different ways that you can change what you're working with. Okay. So this is very similar to some of the options that we had used before. Okay, so for blend mode, we're going to choose multiply for the purposes of this. But again, it's a menu you can work with as you wish. Opacity, we're going to set to 75. And then we're going to set the angle at 78 degrees. And again, these things might be pre-selected for you already because of the files that we're working with. But if they're not, go ahead and make those changes. The other thing we want to make sure that we have selected is use global light to the right of the angle selection. So make sure that that's checked. We then want to set the distance to 5, the spread value to 30%, and the size to 10. So this isn't actually going to create a new layer like it did when we created the text. It's going to nestle this style into that layer already. So if you go ahead and press OK, look over at your layers panel. Right under the Island Paradise, the main text for the layer, you have new eyes that have shown up. So if you want to see it without these new effects, say, I want to see what it looks like without the drop shadow. I click my eye, and that goes away. So it's the same idea as the eyes for the rest of the layers in that they will be visible or not visible depending on how you clicked the eye. And now look at how much more shadowed our Island Paradise text is. So now I want you to right-click on the Island Paradise layer area, the text, Island Paradise. And then we're going to select Copy Layer Style. And it's towards the bottom half right here. So next, we're going to have you right-click on your Hawaii layer. It's going to bring up the same menu, but this time you're going to choose Paste Layer Style. So that's about halfway up. So now what you've done is you've taken those changes that you made to your Island Paradise text and you've applied them to the Hawaii text also. So this is a shortcut if you want to match up your text styles to keep them uniform. And this is something you might want to consider for portfolio pages or anything that you want to be a professional document to make it match up with your personal brand and what you want it to convey, this is a good way to help your text. Okay, so then, keeping with our Hawaii layer, we are going to go down to our Add a Layer Style button. And it's the one down at the bottom below your layers list that has an FX. So when you click on that, you see this pop-up menu. And you're going to choose Stroke, which is towards the top. It's going to bring up a menu like the one you see on my screen. And we're going to make some changes. So we want to change the size to 4. We want to change the position to outside. We want to keep the blend mode at normal. And the opacity at 100%. And then for color, we want to select a green color that complements the rest of our postcard. So go ahead and click on the color box to bring up your color picker. So again, how your color picker comes up is going to vary by your computer. So you may have to click once to bring up your color picker. If you click twice, it might bring it up in black and white. So once we have our color picker, select the green that you like. And as soon as you click on the green shade that you like, you'll notice that it outlines your Hawaii letters. So if you don't like it, click on another, and then you can see what that looks like. So in my case, I chose a darker shade of green for my Island Paradise text. So I'm going to go with this darker shade to complement my board rather than that lighter green that I have. So click OK as soon as you've made the selection you like. And then it remains. And then go up and save what you've done. Now in your list of layers, in your bottom right corner, we want to go to your flower layer. So this is going to be the flower that's up in the top right corner. So as soon as you have your flower layer selected, go up to Layer in your top menu. And when you click on that, go down to Layer Style. So it's about a third or so of the way down. And then from that menu, you want to choose Drop Shadow. It's going to bring up another menu, just like the one we were working with, but we're going to choose a bit different specification for this layer. So we want the blend mode to be multiply. We want the opacity to be 60%. We want the distance to be 13 pixels. And we want the spread to be 9%. Now, don't click OK yet to get out of your menu. So with your layer style dialog box still open, look to the far left side of the box. So you are going to now go down to the bottom corner where it has the FX, and you're going to select satin.
What if it's not available to click?
Let's see.
Never mind.
Did you get it? Okay, good. That's not an issue I've encountered. So, and sometimes I can say that this side panel to the far left where you see the check boxes, it can be a little finicky to work with. And so clicking in different ways might affect it in different ways, just as a heads up. So once you have your satin menu open, then we are going to make sure that invert is checked right here where my mouse is. And then we're going to change our color to a fuchsia color. So your color box at the top that's black right now, click on that, and then select something that's in the realm of fuchsia or purple, however you want it to look. As soon as you've made that selection, click OK. And then we want to make sure that our opacity is set at 20%. And the distance should be 22. And before you move forward, make sure that satin is checked and highlighted in that light gray color, or blue, depending on your computer. So click OK to close the menu, and then save what you've done. Now, one of the last things we want to do is add a border. So to do this, we're going to scroll up to the top of our layers in the bottom right corner. So the top of our layers list. And we're going to select the Island Paradise layer. Then at the very bottom of our layers panel, we're going to click the Create a New Layer button. So again, the new layer button is the one that looks like it has a corner flipped up. So you're going to see a layer 3 pop up on the top of your stacking order. And we want to rename that layer Border. So we double click. And then we press Enter to save. With that border layer still highlighted, we're going to go up to our top horizontal menu and choose the Select tab. Under Select, you're going to choose All. So now you'll see that you have your blinking dotted lines again. And we're going to go back to the Select tab. So you're going to choose Select. And then you're going to scroll down to modify. And then you're going to choose border. So as soon as you have chosen border, it pops up with this menu that says border selection. In this dialog box, you're going to type 10 pixels for width. And again, you may have this already entered, but if you don't, just replace it with 10. And then click OK. So now you'll see that you have 2 rows of dotted lines. This means that this is where our border will be. So we're going to go over to our foreground and background color swatches. So over here on our vertical toolbar. And we are going to select white for our foreground color. So remember, the foreground swatch is the one that's layered on top of the other square. So I'm going to click on my swatch here. I'm going to choose white. Then I'm going to go up to my Edit tab at the top horizontal menu. I'm going to choose Edit and then Fill. As soon as I choose Fill, another dialog box comes up. So in this dialog box, we want to choose Select Foreground Color, and it may already be selected for you. And then click OK. You'll see that when you click OK, you now have a white border. One thing to note is that in your Edit Fill menu, the area that says in the exercise Use to choose foreground color may be called Contents. This is going to depend on your computer, your operating system, and your version of Adobe. So if it says Contents, that's the same as Use. Okay, then we're going to go up to our Select tab and choose Deselect. So now you can clearly see your white border. And then we're going to save the file. So you now have a complete and lovely postcard from Hawaii, but now we need to save it. So there's a couple key things in terms of saving a file that you need to know. So when you save a file that has multiple layers, it makes it a very large file size. But there is a way to flatten all of the layers together so that you can use the file in a smaller size. But the important thing to remember is that once you flatten a document, you cannot unflatten it. So you want to make sure that you always, for example, if you want to get feedback on a document, you can flatten it to send it, but make sure that you save a copy that is not flattened as well. That's really important. So we want to, in order to flatten what we've done, we want to go up to our Image tab at the top menu. And we want to choose Duplicate. So when this dialog box comes up, then we want to name this new file to be flat. And that's something that I suggest whenever you have a flattened document, just do the regular file name and then flat so that you know which one is which. And then click OK. So leave the to be flat file open, but go ahead and close to be working. You're done with that one. Okay, so then you need to flatten your file. We're going to go over to our Layers panel menu. So in order to get to your flatten file option, you're going to scroll over from this Layers tab all the way to the far right. You're going to select the area where you see those 4 horizontal lines for the menu. And then you're going to choose Flatten Image. So again, it's this little area right here on the very far right. So once I've chosen Flatten Image, then it converts all of my files into one. So we will go ahead and end there with exercise 2B.